Well, hello, my colleagues in Spring MBA 502. I hope everyone is doing well. What I'm going to do is I just want to do an introductory for Chapter 1 to kind of get you the roadmap to where we're heading in this course. Okay, just to show you that there's a real person behind this computer screen. Here I am. So I will wave to you and say hello. And I hope everyone is well. So I will now minimize myself. Okay, and I will take myself out of the way a little bit. I just want to go over things in chapter 1 a little bit. And if you don't mind, every once in a while you'll hear me or see me sipping a cup of coffee. Okay, so chapter 1, we're going to just get the roadmap where we're heading, and we're talking about the corporation and financial markets. This is going to be the main thrust of what we're going to learn this semester. And I will throw in some personal finance stuff because I like doing that. So a little history, if you don't mind. So the modern U.S. corporation was born in a courtroom in Washington, D.C. on February 2nd. This is an important date, 1819. So we'll highlight this a little bit, all right? On that day, the U.S. Supreme Court established the legal precedent that a property of a corporation, like that of a person, is private and entitled to protection under the U.S. Constitution. So you can see the legalities in the forming of a court here, of a corporation here by the U.S. Supreme Court, and it might be interesting to dig up that case and read about that. Today, it is hard to entertain the possibility that a corporation's private property would not be protected under the Constitution. However, before the 1819 Supreme Court decision, the owners of a corporation were exposed to the possibility that the state would take their business. This concern was real enough to stop most businesses from incorporating, and indeed, in 1816, that concern was realized. The state seized Dartmouth College, and this is very interesting, right? That the state seizing Dartmouth College. So Dartmouth College was incorporated in 1769 as a private educational institution governed by self-perpetuating board of trustees. Unhappy with the political leanings of the board, the state legislature effectively took control of Dartmouth by passing legislation in 1816 that established a governor-appointed board of overseers. So you see, back then, you could pretty much have done what you wanted, I guess. So the legislation had the effect of turning a private university under private control into a state university under state control. So things were quite different back then. If such an act were constitutional, it implied that any state or the federal government could at will nationalize any corporation. So eventually, Dartmouth did sue, of course. Dartmouth sued. All right. And the case made it to the Supreme Court under Chief John Marshall in 1818. And a nearly unanimous 5-1 decision, the court struck down the New Hampshire law ruling that a corporation was a contract, and this is the important word here, a contract, okay? And that under Article 1 of the Constitution, the state legislatures were forbidden to pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. So that's how it came about, and this is really where the beginning of a corporation. So they give you the number there, so there it is, you can get a hold of that. The precedent was set. Owners of businesses could incorporate and still enjoy the protection of private property as well as protection from seizure. Okay, so as I said, this is the case where the modern business corporation was born. Today, the corporate structure is ubiquitous, meaning it's everywhere, if you don't know what that means, all over the world, and continues to evolve in the face of new forces. So in 2000, everyone should be aware, in 2008, we had a major financial crisis, And that basically transformed a lot of things, right? And big companies like Bear Stearns, Lehman, and AIG, and a lot of things got reshaped. Uh, and a lot of these banks for a while became government controlled, like Goldman Sachs. And that's because the government gave them money through bailouts, right? Everyone should realize that there were bailouts. I think $700 billion. There was a TARP program. Remember that? Had provoked challenging questions regarding the role of the federal government and the control and management of private corporations. In the wake of that crisis, significant reforms of the regulation and oversight of financial markets were passed into law. And though the crisis has now passed, new political agendas and global tensions reshape the practice of business. Okay, so let's go here. So the focus of this book is on how people and corporations make financial decisions. This chapter introduces the corporation and explains alternative business organizational forms. A key factor in the success of corporations is the ability to easily trade ownership shares, and so we're going to talk about shares and stock, right? And we're going to explain the role of stock markets. So we'll talk a lot about that, but we got to first touch on interest rates in chapter 5. We have to understand interest rates. All right, so this is the kind of the all-encompassing thing of the roadmap of where we're going to head. I'll put that in blue. All right. So you all see that. And for some reason, okay. So my colleagues, we will begin our journey by discussing the 4 major classifications of firms here. So we're going to talk about the 4 major types of firms: sole proprietorships, partnerships, limited liability companies, and corporations. So limited liability corporations are real important, and we'll talk more about those. Okay. So we're going to talk about each one. All right. So quite simply, a sole proprietorship, and let me click on that, is a business owner run by one person. So that's the first definition we kind of need here. So we'll highlight that, right? Sole proprietorships are usually very small with few, if any, employees. They do not account for much sales revenue in the economy, but they're the most common type of firm in the world. Now, why are they the most common, in my opinion? Is people like working for themselves and putting effort into their businesses and their lives for themselves. If any of you probably right now work for a corporation or intend to, you're going to see that you're going to work very hard, and the rewards may be few in some companies. So if we look at this chart here, you can see that 72% of all firms are sole proprietorships, and another 7%, which are again small companies, are limited liabilities, and partnerships like accounting and legal. We'll talk about those. Make up about 3%, and corporations about 18%. But as you can imagine, the the revenues are mostly generated by this 18% chunk here of corporations. The large corporations, such as now Amazon.com. So this is the percentages of businesses, all right, that we just looked at in this pie chart here. Percentages of business. And now, again, as I just said, here's the percentages of revenue. So you can clearly see the how they're disjointed. Here, it's only 18% of corporations, but they have 82% of the revenue. And sole proprietorships only have 4% of the revenue. So if you contrast the percentage versus the percent of businesses versus the percentage of revenue, there's quite a contrast there. Okay. So what makes up what characteristics make up a sole proprietorship? They're easy to set up, pretty much, and you probably go to a lawyer, get one set up. And the limitation is that there's no separation between the firm and the owner, right? I guess you got to get insurance, though, right, to protect yourself in case there's somebody slips or falls on your property or gets hurt in your business. The firm can have only one owner. If there are other investors, they cannot hold an ownership stake in the firm. So that's important to know. And you can go to the NOLO. I think you go to the NOLO website, you'll see that the owner has unlimited personal liability. And this is real important for many of the firm's debts, right? So as far as debts go, you got to worry about that. So if the firm defaults on any debt payment, the lender can and will require the owner to repay the loan from personal assets. And this is a real important consideration. That's why a lot of little companies will go bankrupt. An owner who cannot afford to repay the loan must declare personal bankruptcy, as I just said, and the life of a sole proprietorship is limited to the life of the owner. And it's difficult to transfer the ownership of a sole proprietorship. All right, I make these videos in chunks because they get too large to upload and they take quite a while. So I do them in about somewhere between 10 and 15 minute size chunks. All right, just so everybody knows. So for most businesses, the disadvantage of a sole proprietorship will outweigh the advantages. As soon as the firm reaches the point at which it can borrow without the owner agreeing to be personally liable, the owners typically convert the business into a form that limits the owner's liability. Okay, so I'll stop here and then we'll pick up on the let's see, where will we pick up? Let me just click here. All right, so we'll click up when we get to partnerships, okay? On the next part 2.